Yo, what's up, everybody, and welcome to the Deal Divers podcast, where we deep dive actual closed deals to uncover those gems, give you knowledge and tips that you can use in your wholesale journey to close your next deal. I'm your host, Ty Franklin, also known as Ty the Investor on Instagram. So if you're not following me on Instagram already, make sure you head over there and hit that follow button. I drop daily tips and videos on how to wholesale real estate every single day. Now, before we get into the video on this closed deal and break this down, make sure you like the video if it's providing you any value. You comment any questions, comments, or anything below, any tips that you may have below, and also subscribe to the channel for more videos if you feel like this video has been valuable. All right. What type of seller lead is this? Where did we find the lead? All these different questions, right? So the way that we found this lead, we created a list on PropStream. All right. The list that we created on PropStream was a high equity absentee owner list. Basically, that means the property has a lot of equity in it. We always put about 40% or more equity because you got to have some equity in these deals in order to make the right offer to get that seller cashed out, all right, without the seller having to owe any money. So you want to make sure that these properties have enough equity in them so you can do that. And now the second part of that was the absentee owner part, right? So the absentee owner is basically a property owner that doesn't particularly live in that property. They don't primarily occupy that property. Is absentee, right? So it may be a rental property that they don't live in. It may be a vacant property that they don't live in. But the key point is with absentee owners, the owner does not primarily occupy that property. All right. So we downloaded that list off of PropStream. There's a 7-day free trial link in the bio if you want to test them out. Downloaded that list and we skip traced that list through batchskiptracing.com. Batchskiptracing.com allows us to get the property owner's contact information, phone numbers, email addresses, etc. And that's what we utilize so we can go ahead and market to that property owner, right? And that's the next step that we did on this deal. We marketed to that property owner. And the way that we marketed to this property owner in particular is we cold call. This was a cold call lead. So basically what we did was once we downloaded that list of high equity absentee owners in a specific area, after we skip traced it, we uploaded that same list to our power dialer. And the power dialer that we use is Call Tools, okay? Call Tools. Now, once we uploaded that list of Call Tools, we had our VAs call through that data, call through those lists over and over and over and over again until they found someone that had some interest in selling the property. So in this particular instance, we came across this woman back in November of 2022. This is months, over a year ago. Well, almost a year ago when this lead was added into our system. And we came across this seller lead. And the reason why she wanted to sell the property is, well, one, she didn't occupy the property. The person that was occupying the property was her ex-husband. And her ex-husband is sick. He has some kind of some issues health-wise. So she was allowing him to occupy the property. And she wanted to eventually sell the property. But before she sold it, she needed to make sure that she was able to find him a senior citizen home or something like that where she can move him out of the property so she can sell it. That's what kind of took a long time for this deal because we had to wait until she was able to find a place for her ex-husband to move into, right? So like I said, we added this lead into our database in November of 2022, right? We had to consistently follow up with this seller over and over and over again until she was actually ready and prepared to make the final decision to sell the property. When it came to making an offer, she gave us a ballpark figure as far as how much she wanted for the property. And we identified that the property, what she was asking was well below market value in order for us to make a deal, right? So on Zestimate, the Zestimate of this property was about $339,000. And she was only asking for like 260 or 250 around there. And we end up settling at 257,500. Okay. So that was the contract price. We got under contract for around $257,000. When she was told us that that was her asking price, we realized that this was a property that we needed to stay on top of. We had to consistently follow up. We had to consistently make sure that we didn't let this lead slip to the cracks and go to another wholesaler or whatever the case may be. So it was constant follow-up over a course of 6-7 months. And you can see right here, I'm gonna pop it up on the screen of the follow-up, right? Just following up over and over and over again. So once she was ready to sell the property, we went under contract. We went under contract in July of 2023. So about a month and a half ago. Okay. Now, once we went under contract, we had set up a walkthrough of the property. Every time we go under contract, we set up a walkthrough of the property so we can get photos to send off to our buyers. So this property was a little bit further out than what we wanted to physically go. So what we had to do was hire boots on the ground to go out there to take photos of the property for us so we can show our buyers. And for boots on the ground, we pay $50 for someone to take photos, take videos, and send to us. And you can find boots on the ground from Facebook groups, buy, sell, trade groups, Facebook investment groups, right? And just ask, hey, I'm looking to take photos of a property here in this area. I'm willing to pay $50 or whatever the case may be. And you just let them go out there, take photos, and you Cash App, Zelle, Apple Pay, however you want to do it to get those photos. So we sent somebody out there to get the photos, and they sent it back. With this property in particular, it matched all the criteria of one of our high-end buyers, which is a hedge fund buyer, okay? So it matched the year built. It was built in 2006, I believe the property was. Built in 2006. It had more than 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, had 2-car garage. The square footage was good. It wasn't on a main street, so it matched the criteria of one of our high-end buyers, hedge fund buyers. So we sent it directly to them, and they came back with an offer of $281,000. Okay, $281,000. So we got the property under contract for $257,000, and we got an offer from my higher-end buyer at $281,000. Right, so that's already like a $23,000 spread right there. So for us to close this deal, we had to wait a little while because the seller was trying to prepare to move out and etc. So we got it locked up in July. We didn't end up closing this until the end of September, over about 2 months' time. Okay, so with that being said, we had to continuously follow up with the seller, make sure that they were still good to go to sell the property, get the title ran, all these different things, okay? So once we got through that process, we're coming up to the closing date. And there was a couple issues on getting this thing closed. One of the main issues was since the seller and her ex-husband were divorced, we had to make sure that we had the right paperwork in place for her to transfer ownership. So a day or two before closing, the title company reaches out to us and tells us that they needed to get a quitclaim deed signed by the ex-husband, which eventually caused the seller to kind of freak out and all these different things. But we had to calm her down and let her know that, hey, this is part of the process. It's to protect you, to make sure there's nothing coming back on you later on. So in order to do this, we had to set up a mobile notary, a rush mobile notary, to go out to the property, meet with them to get that quitclaim deed signed, and then have them bring that same quitclaim deed back to the title company at closing the next day. All in all, we were able to make that work, and we end up closing with a $21,000 profit net after it was all said and done. So that was the breakdown of the deal. In this one in particular, it wasn't an assignment, right? So if you do know, in wholesale real estate, you can close deals in 2 different ways. You can do an assignment of contract, or you can do a double close. In this one in particular, hedge funds pretty much required to do double closings, right? And the difference between the two is an assignment of contract is essentially you get under contract with the seller with your purchase and sales agreement, and then you get under contract with the buyer with the assignment contract, right? The assignment agreement. And basically what the assignment agreement is saying is I am assigning all of the rights of the purchase and sales agreement over to this end buyer. So whatever you have on that purchase and sales contract, the buyer is going to be responsible for that. So buyer is responsible. Let's say if you put on your purchase contract, you're going to cover the closing costs. Let's say you're going to buy it as is condition. Let's say there's an additional term that if the property has tenants, the tenant is to stay 1 week after closing, right? The buyer is going to be responsible for all of those things. The buyer is going to be responsible for the earnest money deposit, right? So you want to make sure that you let your buyers know exactly what's on that purchase and sales agreement, because they are taking on the responsibility of everything in those obligations. And then you have your double close. Your double close is essentially two closings, right? You have two purchase and sales agreements. You have a purchase and sales agreement between you and the seller. Then you have a purchase and sales agreement between you and the buyer. Now, why do you have two purchase and sales agreement? And why is it called a double close? Well, the reason is simple. You're basically closing on the property twice. You're basically purchasing the property in your name for a short period of time, and then you're actually selling that property over to the buyer in that short period of time, right? Now, in order to execute this, you're going to need either transactional lending, transactional funding, or you're going to need to utilize pass-through funding. Now, you need to utilize these types of funding because you need to purchase the property first, right? On the purchase and sales agreement between you and the actual seller. That is called the A to B. And then the purchase and sales agreement between you and the buyer, that's called the B to C, okay? So what you can do, you can get transactional lending, transactional funding, same thing, to purchase that property for a short period of time, pay a fee, 1% or something like that. Or you can do the pass-through funding, which is essentially you utilizing your buyer's funds to purchase the property on your behalf on an A to B transaction, and then they get the property at the end. So those are two types of transactions or closing strategies you can utilize when you're wholesaling. Some people utilize the double close transaction when they do not want the seller or the buyer to know exactly how much money that they're making on a deal as the wholesaler. So for example, let's say you're making $30,000 on the deal and you don't want your buyer or your seller to know that, then you'll do two purchase and sales agreements and you'll double close that. If you don't care, it doesn't matter, then you'll do an assignment of contract, all right? And there's no really big difference between the two besides the paperwork utilized and you needing to get the funding in order to close that. So that's that deal. We just closed that deal, $21,000 in the bank account. And we're going to take that money, invest it back in the business, and rinse and repeat. I hope you guys got some value out of this video. That was just one deal breakdown that we recently just closed on. We got more in the pipeline, more coming. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this thing up. Once again, if you got any value, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. And we'll see you on the next episode. I'm out.